Welcome to a basic combat tutorial for Emperor of the Fading Suns. The intricacies of how combat transpires and the details of what the unit statistics really does shall be laid bare. This Battlemaster series is all about combat mechanics and strategy. In order for us to delve deeply into combat strategy, we must first understand the values and mechanics that the game presents us. We will be pitting units against each other and analyzing what the game really does throughout each step. Note that we will only be discussing the basics of combat mechanics with a special focus on the unit statistics. In our first example, we'll look at the properties of two early game units, the Infantry Legion and the Militia Legion. Both of these units are available from very early on, particularly the Militia Legion, of which undoubtedly fills the ranks of many a noble lord or lady. Let's have a look at the relevant unit properties that pertain to how a unit performs in combat. The sect system that was introduced in the 1.5 patch has the capability to modify nearly all of a unit's combat properties. This system is rendered inert for this specific video guide. A unit has two main areas of data that we are interested in. One is the statistics area, which includes economic, logistical, and defensive properties. The other is the attack area, which only has information about the unit's offensive capabilities. It is prudent to split these areas for the purposes of this explanatory guide. Let us firstly look closer on the statistics area, viewing the data from the Infantry Legion unit. We are not interested in how many movement points a unit has once it is engaged with the enemy, nor do we care about whether or not the unit consumes food. Similarly, a unit's cost and upkeep in Firebirds bears no impact upon its ability to fight. The remaining values that are not obfuscated are all relevant, however. The most critical piece of information is whether or not a unit participates in combat in the first place. There are two possible values for this parameter, yes or no. If it says no, the unit is classified as a non-combatant and will never participate in combat and will in fact be auto-captured should an enemy combat unit move into the hex location containing the non-combat unit. Any statistics value on screen right at this moment is completely irrelevant should the unit not be combat capable, with the exception of the spotting and camouflage values for their respective benefits outside of combat. The movement type is what determines if an attack is capable of hitting the unit or not. A foot unit, like this Infantry Legion, is susceptible to indirect, direct, close, and psi. A submarine unit or underwater unit is susceptible to the underwater attack, but in contrast to the foot unit, is not susceptible to either indirect, direct, or close. By reviewing the weapon target table that is found inside of the target.dat file, you can get a better understanding of what attacks will target what types of units. The movement type is, of course, also quite relevant outside of combat for logistical purposes. A unit's rank tells us the targeting priority for the opposing side regarding the unit in question during any given weapon phase. If we have two units that the enemy can target, the other side will attempt to target the lower-ranked unit first. If units attempting to find targets are unable to find a target with rank 0, they will check if there are any units of rank 1 to target, and incrementally check higher rank values for available targets until one is found. An exception to this is if the targeting unit in question is a spy, noble, dervish, which have the assassination function. These units will start targeting any unit of rank 6 or above firstly, skipping rank 0 to rank 5. Ranks can have values ranging from 0 to 9. If a unit with the assassination function fails to find a unit with rank 6 or higher, it will loop back around and start looking from rank 0 like a normal unit. The rank of a unit not only tells us the order of which the opposing side prioritizes targeting the unit, but it also defines how early it will attempt to target other units itself in comparison to other allied units in the stack. Should we have a unit with rank 1 and another unit with rank 2 in the same stack, our rank 1 unit will look for enemy targets firstly. Then our rank 2 unit will attempt to find a suitable target. Multiple units will never attempt to target the same unit, unless there are no other valid targets in that specific weapon phase remaining. Example, if the enemy has 2 infantry and 2 submarines, each of their infantry legions would be ganged up upon by 2 of our own, since there are simply no more available targets to choose from in the weapon phases the infantry legions has. Infantry can never target submarines, and their 2 submarines are simply ignored for the purposes of finding a target. Another example. If the enemy has 4 infantry with rank 4 and 1 noble with rank 8, while we have 4 infantry with rank 4, each single infantry on both sides would target 1 opposing infantry legion, while the enemy noble would gang up on 1 infantry legion while not being targeted at all. If we instead also had a noble, all infantry legions with rank 4 would target a singular opposing infantry legion, while the nobles on each side would duel each other, due to them both having the highest rank, but also because they have the assassination flag. More of the rank system will come as part of a more advanced guide, but this should suffice and serve as the basic concept of what the rank value signifies in combat. The agility of a unit determines how proficient a unit is at not taking a hit from an enemy attack. Agility is the defensive property of the unit being targeted, while accuracy is the offensive property of the incoming attack. Both agility and accuracy are required together to figure out if an attack hits or misses, since the chance to hit is dependent on both values. If an enemy attack has an accuracy that is equal to the target's agility, the total chance to hit is equal to 50%. Any single point of difference in these values incurs a 5% difference to the chance to hit, meaning if the accuracy of the attack is 1 higher than the target's agility, there is a 55% chance to hit. If we pit the infantry and the militia up against each other, we will go through each attack and find the correct chance to hit for both parties. We start at the top with the air attack of the infantry legion. Remember that an attack must be able to target the unit in question before either agility or accuracy has any meaning. If an attack is unable to target a movement type, then the attack will simply look for another unit or possibly be skipped entirely if no valid targets remain on the battlefield. This air attack is completely unable to target enemy units of the foot movement type and will attempt to find another valid target. In this scenario, there are no air units or otherwise valid targets for the air attack. The attack is then skipped entirely. Moving onwards to the direct attack, an attack capable of actually targeting foot units, we can see 2 values. The first value is the accuracy, while the second is its strength. We'll come back to strength and armor later. The direct attack has an accuracy of 2, while the agility of the target agility of 6. This means that the chance to hit is equal to 50% plus or minus the difference of these 2 values, of which is 6 minus 2 is 4, multiplied by 5%. The agility is the higher value, and as such the final chance to hit is equal to 50% minus 4 times 5%. This calculation is equal to 50% minus 20%, culminating in the final chance to hit value of 30%. If we take a look at the close attack, the infantry has an accuracy of 4. Against the same unit, the chance to hit is therefore the same as the previous direct attack, but given an additional 2 accuracy for its close attack. This means that the accuracy is 30% plus 2 times 5%, which is equal to 40% chance to hit. This time around, the enemy militia gets to fire back. The militia has an accuracy of 3, while the infantry has an agility of 7. This means that the enemy militia has a total chance to hit the infantry of 30%. The chance to hit is 50%. Each point of difference adds or subtracts 5%. There are several things that can impact a unit's accuracy and agility. Leader bonuses, technologies, specific sects and relics are just a few things that may impact how a unit performs for both targeting and evasion. A very important factor for both agility and accuracy is whether or not a unit is spotted before combat or not. Should a unit have managed to avoid detection by the enemy, it would benefit from a +3 agility boost for that battle. This is why the spotting and camo values do, to some extent, matter for combat. The detection mechanic is solved outside of combat, but in similar terms to how accuracy is compared against another unit's agility, spotting is directly compared against the camouflage value. This detection algorithm becomes complicated with terrain modifiers and will be present in another guide. Suffice to say, if you do not manage to spot the enemy, they will receive an added 3 agility. If you manage to remain hidden before combat initiates, you will, as well, benefit from this added 3 agility. For certain units up against certain attacks, an added 3 agility is enough to completely halve the damage output of the enemy. If a unit hits another unit with its attack, damage can be calculated and applied. This is where strength, armor, and PsyDef comes in. As per spotting and camouflage, accuracy and agility, we know very little until we are informed of both the strength of the attack and the armor or PsyDef of a unit. Both of these values in relation to each other decide how much damage is actually being applied per hit. The calculation is straightforward, but somewhat difficult to keep track of precisely. There is a file called damage.dat that determines how much damage is done. The ratio of the attack's strength compared to the defender's armor or PsyDef determines which column is chosen. The formula to determine which column is shown here. This is a quotient formula, or perhaps otherwise known as whole number division. There are 2 possibilities. If strength is equal to or larger than the enemy armor or PsyDef, the calculation is extremely simple. Take the quotient of the strength over the armor or PsyDef of the target. You can simply divide the strength by the armor or PsyDef, but you always round down to the nearest whole number. Dividing 3 over 2 gives us 1.5. We then round down to end up with 1, of which our ratio would be the 1-to-1 column. The other possibility occurs when the strength is lower than the enemy unit's armor or PsyDef. This is slightly more complicated, but there is a decent rule of thumb here as well. The minimum value that the strength must be multiplied by to equal or surpass the target's armor or PsyDef determines the column. For instance, if the defense has a value of 15, but our strength is only 14, we must multiply our value of 14 by 2 in order to surpass the defense value of 15. If our strength was 8, we'd still have to multiply by 2 in order to get to 16, surpassing the defense value of 15 barely. Both a strength of 14 and 8 gives us a ratio of 1 to 2. If our strength was 7, multiplying by 2 only puts us up to 14, meaning we have to multiply one additional time to end up with a ratio of 1 to 3. In actuality, it is not the militia that has 15 armor, but the infantry legion. Let us test with the correct values for both units. The infantry legion has its 3 attacks, while the militia only has 1. The infantry cannot actually hit with its attack listed at the top, so we will not consider it for our calculation. The armor of the militia is 10. That means we have a trivial calculation in front of us. Since the strength of the infantry legion's attacks are all equal to or higher than the armor of the militia, we simply divide the strength by the armor and round down to the nearest whole number. The direct attack has a strength that is equal to the target's armor. When we divide 10 by 10, we end up with 1. This means that if the infantry legion manages to hit the militia with a direct attack, it will do an amount of damage equal to a random element under the 1-to-1 column. The close attack of the infantry is also very trivial to calculate. We divide 40 by 10 to end up with the 4-to-1 column. As we can see, the damage is substantially different, but possibly not as much as we'd originally have thought. Indeed, quadrupling the strength of your attacks do not automatically mean that you do 4 times the damage that you would do with an equal strength to armor ratio. In this case, we can see that quadrupling your damage actually seemed to simply merely double your damage output when you land a successful hit on an enemy. Yet, this is not the case for every single increase between these ratios. Going from a 2-to-1 ratio up to a 4-to-1 ratio does tremendously little in increasing your damage. It is very much worth noticing that the most critical ratio levels lie in the middle around the 1-to-1 ratio. If you have equal the amount of strength as your target's armor or psi defense, you have relatively little to gain by increasing your weapon strength directly. Due to the fact that a unit's weapon strength is directly linked to its remaining health, a unit with a 1-to-1 ratio will quickly drop down to a 1-to-2 ratio should it lose 50% of its health. Similarly, a unit that has reached a 4-to-1 ratio will, when it loses half its health, drop to a 2-to-1 ratio. To summarize what this means for you, higher strength units will manage to persevere under duress while retaining its combat effectiveness for longer. The most important values to aim for in defeating your enemies, however, is to attempt to have at least half the strength of your target as the bare minimum. A more effective value to aim for to increase your damage is to have the same strength as your target's armor. Values higher than a 2-to-1 ratio usually adds longevity and robustness to a unit as it takes fire and loses health, more than it directly increases the damage. If we go back to the militia unit this time around, we here have a unit that has a 10 strength attack. The infantry actually has an armor value of 15. This means that the militia unit will reference a column that is to the left of the 1-to-1 column. In using our simple rule of thumb, we simply multiply 10 by the number of times we need to equal or surpass the armor of the infantry legion. By multiplying by 2, we end up with 20, meaning we surpass the armor value of 15. Therefore, the damage that befits the militia's attack is found under the 1-to-2 column. Should our militia try to target a tank, which has an armor of 40, we need to multiply our own weapon strength by 4 to surpass, or in this case equal the 2 values. This means that we end up with a damage belonging to the 1-to-4 column, a hideous and truly ineffective endeavor. Armor or psi defense are modified by many things, such as traits, the structure bonuses in the hex location, relics, sects, but most importantly of all is experience. Units can have 3 experience levels. The starting experience has a malus of negative 20% strength and armor, while the last level of experience gives a positive 20% strength and armor. Experience matters massively, and it's important to note how your strength and armor are modified by your experience. If you have a weapon that can barely penetrate the armor of an enemy, you falling under by 20% will lose you a substantial amount of damage output. Similarly, if you end up in a situation where you don't really do that much damage, having a cadre of elites can drastically alter the course of the battle, as your more experienced troops not only do more damage, have more armor, and rout less so than your more green soldiers. The entire combat procedure revolves around going from one weapon phase to the next. Each attack belonging to a phase will attempt to attack up to some specified amount pertaining to the phase in question. Target.dat contains the order of each weapon phase and how many times each weapon will execute an attack attempt before moving on to the next weapon. Combat persists, meaning this entire cycle starts anew from the beginning until only one side has units that are not dead nor routed. Naval combat, orbital bombardment and planet-to-space firings only occur for one combat round, meaning units on both sides can remain without being dead nor routed. Psi attacks are not compared against regular armor, but instead is compared up against psi defense. Otherwise, the calculations are completely identical to conventional attacks versus conventional armor. Stay tuned for more tutorials. I hope this has been informative. May the stars shine brightly upon thee. Until next time.